You're listening to the Fresh Hell podcast. Fresh Hell contains stories of a disturbing and often graphic nature and is intended for a mature audience. Please don't let your kids listen to this, or they might turn out like us.
Hi, I'm Annie from Massachusetts, and yes, I do live very close to Salem.
And I'm Johanna from Austria, and you're listening to your favorite international podcast. The podcast hosted by two women who never met in real life, but who could totally end up on the stake together.
You're not wrong.
And I don't mean steak like S-T-E-A-K. I mean steak.
That's right. Hellions, as always, we need to start with a huge thank you to our patrons. You are the reason that this podcast is still bubbling away in the cauldron week after week. Your support keeps the candles lit, the research rabbit holes deep, and the spooky fuckery flowing. And a very, very special shout out to our newest members, Todd Rodman and Alex Fraser. Thank you so much.
Oh, and also Vanessa.
Thanks, Vanessa.
If you've been thinking about joining us on Patreon, October is the perfect time. You'll get access to our Cinema Macabre episodes, early access to ad-free episodes, and our monthly live get-togethers. There's going to be a Halloween live get-together this month, obviously. There we actually get to talk to you face-to-face or screen-to-screen in a way, and it's usually very cozy. It's a smaller group and sometimes a little bit creepy or funny, occasionally chaotic. You know, it's the whole eclectic Fresh Hell mix going on there.
And since it's spooky fuckery season, don't forget to send us your Halloween listener stories. You have until the 24th of October to get your story to us. Send us your ghost encounters, family curses, hometown legends, whatever weirdness has haunted your life. We want to hear about it. These episodes are some of our favorites every year. We often hear from our listeners that they absolutely love the annual Halloween episode, and so we just can't wait to hear what you have for us this time around. Please send your spooky stories to freshhellpodcast@gmail.com and title them Halloween, and let us know, of course, how we should address you if you want to be Annie from Massachusetts or A from the USA.
Yeah, or anonymous.
Or anonymous from It Doesn't Matter. And don't forget, one of you will be chosen randomly. This is very exciting. As the winner of a special Halloween candy giveaway, Austrian candy. You don't want to miss it. It's good stuff. As it's officially Spooky Fuckery Month, we thought you might need even more spooky fuckery in your life than usual.
And if that's the case, and I'm sure it is, we've got the perfect recommendation. A podcast called Macabrium.
This is a storytelling podcast that pulls you right in. Every episode feels like the best ghost story or true crime tale told around a campfire.
Yes, the hosts, Megan and Derek, are both actors, so they really know how to bring these stories to life. They have amazing voices, and they cover everything from unsolved crimes to folklore. I think this is very on brand for our listeners as well. I think that's right up your alley.
Absolutely. And there's no fluff here, just rich, unforgettable stories that stick with you long after the episode ends.
And you know what's the cool thing is? Our episodes drop on a Friday, but their episodes drop every Tuesday. So if you're looking for more chilling tales, you know, at the beginning of the week, this October, check out Macabrium.
Trust us, it'll leave you with plenty to think about and maybe just a little less eager to turn off that light at night.
Now, as Annie already said, it's that time of the year again, SFM, Spooky Fuckery Month. Around here, October means a full month of haunted history, cursed objects, and legends that keep us sleeping with the lights on. Also, this year we're gonna have a murder. So, as always, the high point will be our annual Halloween listener stories episode. I know many of you and Annie and I, we're all looking forward to it all. And if you're not into all these Halloween things, please come back in November.
That's right.
When we get back to our usual.
That's right. Yes. Halloween is definitely more of the spooky, sort of haunty kind of thing, for sure.
Annie, I have one important question for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Johanna, I live in Massachusetts. We basically invented puritanical misery. Delicious sounds like a huge improvement.
So that's a yes.
It is, abso-fucking-lutely. If living deliciously means cheese on the table, dogs at my feet, shiny things in every corner of my haunted old house painted in Parisian green, the kind that kills you, then hand me the pen. I'm in. I am in.
But that pretty much sounds like your life already.
Yes, I don't have as many crows as I would once hope, but let's just say the ink has been dry for a while on that particular contract.
In case you didn't recognize that question I just asked Annie, wouldst thou like to live deliciously? It comes from the Robert Eggers 2015 film, The Witch. If you've seen it, you know it's not your typical jump scare horror movie. It's a slow burn.
I have not seen it.
You haven't? You have to watch it, but you heard about Black Phillip, right?
Yes.
For everyone, including Annie, so the story follows a Puritan family in 1600s New England who leave their community and they try to survive on their own at the edge of the wilderness. But then there's isolation and paranoia and rigid beliefs that start to consume them. And then there's Black Phillip, the family goat, which sounds lovely, right? How wouldn't you want to live with a goat at the edge of the wilderness?
I very much do want to live with a goat at the end of the wilderness.
Isolated from the rest of the community, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah, they are living the dream. Until that son of a goat starts walking on his behind legs, whispering that famous line, offering a way out. Wouldst thou like to live deliciously? And that line gets right to the heart of why witch stories have always terrified and fascinated people. It's not just about dark magic or broomsticks, it's actually about temptation, power, freedom, and what happens when fear takes over.
Here in the United States, when you mention witches, most people immediately think of Salem. The Salem witch trials of 1692 are burned into the American mind. A handful of girls accusing neighbors of witchcraft, entire communities caught up in a storm of hysteria, and 20 people executed before the panic finally burned itself out. No pun intended, because we did not burn witches here in Salem. Salem has become shorthand for misogyny, paranoia, injustice, and mass panic. But Salem was tiny, terrible, really awful, of course. But compared to what was happening in Europe, it was a tiny drop in the cauldron. In German-speaking lands, thousands and thousands of people were accused of witchcraft over the course of the 16th and 17th centuries. Entire towns were consumed by witch hunts. Sometimes children were accused, sometimes whole families. Torture was a standard procedure, and once a person confessed, they were forced to name others, which of course turned the trials into a chain reaction of executions.
Yeah, and some of the most infamous of the witch crazes didn't happen all that far from where I'm sitting right now. In places like Bamberg, Würzburg, Salzburg, the trials reached levels of horror Salem never even came close to. While 20 people were executed in Massachusetts, over 1,000 were killed in just a few years in Würzburg alone. So today, as part of our annual Spooky Fuckery Month, we're looking at witches. But not the American kind you already know. We're going to talk about Austrian and German witch lore, the folklore that fueled these panics, the Sabbath and weather magic the farmers and people in the Alps really feared, and of course the witch trials that turned entire communities upside down and basically against each other. Now, if we're going to talk about witches, we should probably start at the very beginning, because people didn't just suddenly start believing in witches in the Middle Ages. The idea is much, much older. The fear of people using magic to harm others, what anthropologists call maleficium, is basically universal. You find it in the ancient Near East, Egypt, Greece, Rome. The first written laws against witchcraft actually go all the way back to Mesopotamia in the Code of Hammurabi from around 1750 BC. There's even a rule about accusing someone of witchcraft. If you were wrong, you could be put to death. So that tells us people were already deeply suspicious of magic users thousands of years ago. The Babylonians and Assyrians had rituals to counter curses. The ancient Egyptians feared sorcerers who could command demons. The Greeks had their witches too, figures like Medea who brewed potions and could summon storms. And as I said, even the Romans, who loved their law codes, had spells scratched into little lead curse tablets, hoping to ruin their enemies. So the idea of witches wasn't new to Europe at all. What changed in the Christian world was the framework. The church fused all their fears of harmful magic with theology about the devil. And suddenly it wasn't just, my neighbor cursed my cow. It was, my neighbor is in league with Satan and threatening all of Christendom. And that's when everybody snapped.
Wow, that escalated quickly. I mean, I think we can slow down a little bit because nobody snapped, not at first. Yes, by the Middle Ages, Europe had inherited all these older fears about magic, but the church originally had a surprisingly skeptical attitude toward witches. Early medieval texts often dismissed witchcraft as superstition. The church thought people who claimed to fly at night or to attend Sabbaths were just deluded. Yes, maybe tricked by the devil, but not actually capable of magic. Okay, listen, maybe the devil did appear to this person and do them a really sneaky trick, but they can't do magic. We have to draw the line somewhere, do we not?
They were pretty relaxed in the beginning.
I mean, so this all started to change around the 13th and 14th centuries, and that's when Europe was hit with just disaster after disaster. Famine swept through when the crops failed. The Black Death wiped out as much as half of the population, and the war seemed endless. The 100 Years' War between England and France dragged on from 1337 to 1453, devastating the countryside.
Don't you just love it how they're like, let's just call it the 100 Years' War and be done with it?
It's it.
We can stop counting at that point.
We can just, it's going to be a little more than 100 years, but who needs specifics at this point?
It's just too many years. It's too many
years of war. Yeah. And the Holy Roman Empire, the messy patchwork of what's now Germany and Austria, was just constantly racked with smaller conflicts. Peasant uprisings, those damn annoying peasants. And then raids from the Ottoman forces pushing into Central Europe. Life felt fragile, unstable, and dangerous because it was. And in times like that, people were desperate for explanations. Lord, do tell us, why had the harvest failed? Why was the plague back again? Why had soldiers torched our village? It was easier to blame someone than to face the truth that the world was cruel and chaotic. And unfortunately, it still is. Nothing really changes, does it? I say it all the time that the more we learn about, when you don't learn history, you're doomed to repeat it. And we just... Yeah. But I think what people don't understand about that saying is literally just the understanding of why things happen and how they happened. It's not just memorizing facts, it's the understanding of the why, And I think that's the nuance that a lot of people miss. You can't just memorize dates and facts without understanding the why. Anyhow, witches made the perfect scapegoat in this particular instance. The church, too, began shifting its stance. What once had become brushed off as superstition was now reframed as heresy, and heresy was a threat to Christian society itself. Magic was no longer seen as silly tricks. It was evidence of a pact with Satan. The real turning point came in the late 15th century with a book you've probably heard of, the Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of Witches, published in 1487 by Heinrich Kramer, a German inquisitor. It was basically a witch-hunting manual and a bestseller. Kramer claimed witches were real, They flew through the night, caused storms, murdered children, and had sex with the devil. He also very helpfully explained that women were especially susceptible because, and I quote, they were, quote, weaker in faith and more carnal, end quote. You can imagine how well that went for the women who were poor, elderly, sick, or otherwise an inconvenience to their neighbors, or even their family.
Yeah. By the 1500s, the idea of witches as members of a vast satanic conspiracy had taken hold across Europe.
It's pretty much a medieval version of the Satanic Panic. They did it first.
They did it. It's been done. That's right.
It has.
And as you said, and that's also what I love about history, it's all been done before, always.
Seriously, always. Always.
Yeah, just the setting, the framework, it's a little bit different, but people are peopling, as I like to say.
Ugh, we're the worst. We've always been the worst. We will keep being the worst. Every so often, a friend of mine is like, don't you guys ever worry that you'll run out of things to talk about? And I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, we have these incredibly long lists and we haven't even touched them.
So yeah, the churches, both Catholic and Protestant, agreed on very little, except that witches needed to be hunted down. So torture was not just permitted but encouraged, because the thinking was, if you've made a pact with the devil, you're only going to admit it under extreme duress. And once one person confessed, they'd be forced to name accomplices, which guaranteed the panic would spread like wildfire. But we'll cycle back to this in a short while. First, we want to take a closer look at the folklore that shaped what people in Austria and Germany imagined witches were doing. In the German-speaking world, people had very particular ideas about witches, what they looked like, where they gathered, and most importantly, the havoc they caused in everyday life. And I think it's fair to say, if you were living in 16th or 17th century Bavaria or Austria, you were terrified of witches. Let's start with the most famous witchy night of the year. And no, it's not Halloween, it's the Walpurgisnacht. Every 30th of April, as winter gave way to spring, people believed witches would mount their broomsticks or goats or pitchforks or really any handy farm tool and fly through the night sky together on the Brocken mountain, also known as the Blocksberg, in the Harz region of Germany. This was the witches' Sabbath, a great feast and orgy with the devil himself presiding. There were bonfires, dancing, copious amounts of alcohol, and all the blasphemy and sex, or as I like to say, fornication, you could imagine. If this is starting to sound like a much more fun version of Oktoberfest, except for the pact with the Satan part, maybe it was.
That part. Yeah. I mean, if it weren't for the whole Satan bit, sounds like a good time.
Interestingly, the German word Hexe, witch, didn't actually become widespread until the 16th century. Before that, people used other terms to describe figures who sound very much like what we now call witches. Beings who rode to the Blocksberg together for their secret assemblies. The Brocken's sinister reputation goes back even earlier though. A poem from around 1300 already mentions the mountain as a meeting place for quote-unquote spirit beings. So long before trials and torture, the mountain already carried the weight of some supernatural dread. The Brocken, in a way, was the perfect setting for such stories though. It's the highest peak in northern Germany, constantly shrouded in mist, with this very eerie optical illusion called the Brocken specter.
It's so cool.
It's crazy, right? If what it is, I sent Annie a photo. If you stand on the summit and the sun is behind you, basically your shadow is cast hugely across the clouds below, often with like a halo of rainbow light around it. Now imagine, to medieval eyes, this was of course not, they didn't think, okay, that's a cool optical illusion. This was the devil himself looming over the mountain.
It does look very loomy. When I first learned about this was when we were researching way back, was it like 5 years ago that we were researching Dyatlov Pass?
Yeah.
And this was one of the things where it was like, could they have seen something like this and gotten spooked? Or, spoiler alert, it wasn't this.
Look at the photo and tell me that mustn't have been super scary, impressive but scary back in the day.
I think if I was on a mountain and saw this, or if I was like standing somewhere high and saw this, even today, I would initially be like, wait, what? Like it throws you when you look at it. And then immediately you can kind of think, oh, it's this and that. But back then, with absolutely no framework, people thinking, sharks were poisonous and sea turtles were, devouring people off the shores. Yeah, this is terrifying. It's so cool, though.
We're gonna share photos.
Yeah, it's very cool.
You'll often hear the Brocken called the Blocksberg in old stories. It's the same mountain, just a folkloric name in a way. By the 16th century, the Blocksberg had become the witch's mountain. If you were accused of witchcraft in Austria or Germany, one of the charges you could probably expect was that you'd flown to the Blocksberg to attend a Sabbath. The name shows up in trial records, pamphlets, and even in popular songs and rhymes of the day. For people of the time, riding to the Blocksberg was basically shorthand for being in league with the devil. And as we already mentioned, the Brocken really does have this very eerie spectre illusion, this rainbow-ringed shadow stretching across the mist, probably helped cement its reputation as a place where spirits gathered. Also, while we're on the subject of the Blocksberg, in Germany that name doesn't just mean witches flying off to their Sabbath. For a lot of people, especially kids of the 80s and 90s, it means something a little bit different. Bibi Blocksberg. If you've never heard of her, Bibi is a hugely popular children's book character, basically Germany's answer to Sabrina the Teenage Witch or Bewitched. She's a very spunky little blonde who flies around on her broomstick, which she named Kartoffelbrei or mashed potato. And she gets into magical mischief. I think it wasn't even a book. I think first she started out as a cassette tape series and then cartoons and books and movies. Generations of German-speaking kids grew up falling asleep listening to her stories.
The more I learn about German programming, the more fascinating I find it. It is funny though, isn't it? How centuries Blocksberg means this terrifying place where witches dance with Satan. And now it's this very nostalgic childhood thing for German people of a certain age. I like it.
If you really want to picture what people thought Walpurgisnacht was like, you can't do better than Goethe's Faust. In part 1, Faust and Mephistopheles climb the Brocken on April 30th, Walpurgisnacht. It starts with the wind howling and shadows rushing past them, shapes in the air, half human, half beast. And then the witches arrive. Not just one or two, swarms of them. Imagine a summer night and the mosquitoes are coming in. Some astride broomsticks, other clutching pitchforks, clinging to billy goats as they soar toward the summit. And when they reach the top, the mountain is on fire with bonfires, sparks and torches. Music crashes out, drums pound, and the witches form circles, whirling and shrieking in a frenzy that looks more like a procession than dancing. Witches tumbling over each other, snapping and cackling, their bodies distorted by the firelight. One line describes them streaming toward the mountain, quote, "On to the Brocken, the witches write, the stubble is yellow, the seed is green. There gathers the crowd to meet at night, and over the valleys the witches stream." End quote. Faust, of course, is dazzled and a little bit horrified, while Mephistopheles just smirks and calls it the devil's parliament, where chaos reigns. Goethe's scene is loud and absurd and terrifying all at once, exactly what Walpurgisnacht was supposed to be in the popular imagination, a carnival of witches. Here's one last fun bit of Brocken trivia and also Cold War trivia. For centuries, it had this eerie reputation as the Witches' Mountain, but in the 20th century it became scary for a completely different reason. After World War II, the Brocken ended up inside eastern Germany, right along the border with western Germany, and the whole summit was declared Sperrgebiet, a restricted military zone off limits to ordinary people. So for decades, nobody could go hiking there, and it only reopened to the public after 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell. And since then, the Brocken has leaned hard into its spooky reputation again. There are Walpurgisnacht festival and witch markets, the whole thing, the whole shebang.
I love that a lot. I especially like the idea of witches riding billy goats, which prior to this episode wasn't really something that I had clocked as a thing that could happen. And that would for sure be my chosen. What would you rather ride? A billy goat, a broom, or a pitchfork?
If it's just between those three, I would also choose a billy goat.
Because I've met a lot of goats. And I can't speak for all goats, obviously. I love them, and they give no fucks. Like, if anyone is going to be like, hell yeah, let's fly through the night and, like, land on weird places and see what happens, it would for sure be a goat.
But I have the feeling you have to be, like, naked on a billy goat.
Yeah, Lady Godiva style.
And then wear probably a huge diamond necklace.
That's right. Yeah, that's fine. A big shaggy goat.
Yeah.
And the witches, they weren't just gathering for mountaintop raves. In Alpine Austria, they had other things to be blamed for. They were in charge of the weather. This was a world where people's lives, of course, depended on crops. A bad hailstorm could destroy the harvest in 10 minutes flat. So if your fields were ruined, or your cattle sickened or died, someone had to be responsible. And that someone was almost always a witch. Witches were accused of whipping up storms, calling down hail, freezing vineyards overnight, you name it. Farmers believed witches could steal the very fertility out of the fields and from the cows, funneling milk or butter magically into their own homes.
Could you imagine, like, that would be our witch's power,
yes.
right? Funneling cheese into our homes.
1,000%. If I ever become a witch, secretly, there will be signs. Primarily how much cheese I have.
Also, we would have, like, not a gingerbread house, but a cheese house.
Yes. It's like the tale of the stinky cheese man. So yeah, they believed the witches were stealing all the milk and butter into their own homes. Like, you come home and your daughter was like, you're like, hey, I thought you were going to be churning butter all day. And she's like, I definitely wasn't hooking up in the barn with the next door neighbor's kid all day. The witches must have come and stolen all this butter I worked so hard churning.
What can you do?
Yes. There are accounts of farmers cutting open ropes that they believed witches had knotted in order to trap the wind, releasing storms each time they untied one. Which is, that would be, can we just talk about, like, just logistically how useful that would actually be, right? Like, it's pouring rain. You know what? We've had enough rain. Let's tie this one off because next week we're probably not going to have any rain. That would be...
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Or if the neighbors you hate are having, like, a cool barbecue party and they didn't invite you, well, here comes the hailstorms. Guess what?
That's right. And the neighbors, when the neighbors you love are having a party for their family, oh, let's just move those clouds over to the bad neighbor's side of the street. That's it. Why does it always have to be evil?
Exactly. Exactly. In Tyrol, a particularly popular belief was that witches... This is really great, because who needs billy goats? So witches smeared themselves with a special flying ointment, so-called Hexensalbe or witch's cream, that let them ride the night air to their Sabbath. The ointments were said to be made of herbs, hallucinogenics.
I think the hallucinogenics might be higher on that list of, maybe start with that one.
Sometimes, horrifyingly enough, fat from the bodies of unbaptized babies.
Oh, not the unbaptized baby fat. Honestly, the things people...
But it's so good for the skin.
Yeah, it's giving bathery vibes. Not unbaptized baby, unbaptized, like just, okay.
The logistics alone, how difficult. I mean, back then, the babies got baptized almost immediately because everybody was scared they would die before. And then they are all in limbo with, wings under their chins. And who wants that?
That's right. It's terrible. No one has energy for that. And nighttime was especially dangerous because that's when the witches were believed to strike. And this is where the Druden come in. The Drude was a night demon, often imagined as a hag or a witch who would sleep into your house while you slept, sit on your chest, and suffocate you. Sound familiar? It should. This was my job before I got too sick to do it anymore. I wish. This is the folkloric origin of what people now, of course, call sleep paralysis, which in and of itself is no joke.
No. Yeah, and you know it. If you listen to older episodes, I myself am a decades-long sufferer of sleep paralysis. And yeah, I talked about it enough about the Drude that sits on your chest. And in German, the word for nightmare, Albtraum, literally means elf dream or demon dream. And the feeling of being crushed in your sleep was called Albdruck. So the demon pressure or the elf pressure.
Elf pressure. Mm-hmm. So demons and elves were more intertwined in this lore than, yeah. Oh, so yeah, if you've ever woken up frozen, unable to move, I feel like an infomercial. Have you ever woken up in the night frozen, unable to move or breathe for a few moments? You might be suffering from elf pressure. Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, this is a very real thing. It's a very real thing that people go through. We've talked about it. It's just your body shutting things down so you don't act out your dreams in your sleep. But again, even when you know it's a thing that happens, if it happens to you, it's terrifying.
It's so terrifying.
You can imagine how terrifying it would have been back then when you literally, the only explanation is this is actually someone in your room here to get you. Awful. I mean, joking aside, that is legitimately about the scariest thing you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then there's one of my personal favorites, Perchta, or Frau Perchta. She is an alpine figure who might be benevolent, rewarding the hardworking and tidy, or she might slit open your belly and stuff it with straw if you're lazy or broke taboos. So, kind of like Santa Claus, if Santa Claus was also a serial killer. Perchta became associated with the 12th night and with her retinue of followers, the Perchten, a terrifying group of masked figures who were said to roam the Alps in winter. In modern Austria and Bavaria, this survives as the Perchtenlauf, where young men dress up in horned, demonic costumes with cowbells and run through the streets scaring the hell out of everyone. I want to do that. And as we all learn from Johanna, don't confuse them with the Krampus. That's a totally different thing.
Completely different. How could you confuse them?
Completely. Please, I hope you all know the difference between your Krampuses and Perchtenlauf. They have similarities. It's all, for one, it's all 100% nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
The Walpurgisnacht, Sabbaths, storm-raising witches, Druden crushing sleepers, Perchta stalking households, filled people's minds long before any official trial began. And when life was as unstable as it was in the 15 and 1600s, you didn't really need much more convincing that these things were real. A cow goes dry, a witch stole the milk. A storm wipes out the fields, a witch untied a weather rope.
I mean, obviously. Duh.
Obviously. You wake up paralyzed, gasping, a witch is sitting on your chest. Your child gets sick, the witch next door must have given them the evil eye. It is chilling to think about how everyday misfortune could so easily become a death sentence for an unlucky neighbor.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that the German-speaking lands were especially primed for this kind of hysteria. The Holy Roman Empire was fragmented into hundreds of little states. Each one had its own courts, its own rulers, and very often its own competing religious authorities. Once panic took hold in one community, it could spread rapidly. So, when we now talk about the trials in places like Bamberg or Würzburg or Salzburg, it's very important to remember that people genuinely believed witches could fly, raise storms, strangle them in their sleeps, and judges took those beliefs seriously in court. Folklore turned evidence. And that's the really scary part. All of these terrifying bedtime stories about witches dancing with the devil and calling hailstorms weren't just stories anymore. They became confessions, extracted obviously under torture. They became accusations, and they turned, in the end, to executions fueled by centuries of folklore and just the everyday fears of people who truly believed the world was crawling with witches. Now, before we look at specific trials, it's worth talking about how these hunts actually worked, because there was a chillingly predictable pattern. It usually started with a rumor. Someone's cow went dry. A storm ruined the harvest. A child fell ill. Suddenly, this has to be witchcraft. And this was enough to bring local authorities knocking. Now, once accused, your chances were pretty slim. The German lands were notorious for their use of torture in witch trials. Torture, as I said, wasn't just allowed, it was expected. Because if you made the pact with the devil, you won't just say, yeah, okay, I'll admit I made the pact with the devil. So you have to be persuaded, quote unquote persuaded. And the persuasion came in form of thumbscrews, strap-a-doo, sleep deprivation, sometimes for days. You know it. We did a whole episode on medieval torture, so you know the whole spiel.
That's right. And under that kind of pressure, everyone eventually confessed. But of course, a confession wasn't enough. Judges wanted names, accomplices, fellow witches. So the accused were forced to accuse others, which meant that every trial could trigger dozens more. Imagine if an entire village is laid out in dominoes. As soon as one starts confessing, the whole village is going down. There won't be a house that's not affected in some way, And entire villages just found themselves all caught up in this web of accusations. And the charges were almost always the same: harming neighbors through magic, causing storms or illness, stealing milk or crops. But the more sensational accusations were about the witches' Sabbath, flying to the Blocksberg, worshipping the devil, feasting on unbaptized babies, dancing naked around bonfires, anything that would inflame and terrify.
What do you think? How many times did they just tell these stories, this Christian man, and got really excited about when they were thinking about witches dancing around the fire naked?
For sure.
Like, this repressed sexuality must have played such a huge part there.
Huge. We still see that now.
Yeah.
It's just nothing's changing. This is fine. Yeah. So yeah, these weren't fairy tales anymore. They were legal charges and they were punishable by death. And death was almost always the outcome. In German-speaking territories, burning was the preferred method of execution, although sometimes the victims were strangled or beheaded first in order to spare them the pain of the flames.
Yeah, many people think drowning was the most common way to execute witches, but no. It happened, but drowning, or better, almost drowning, was more of a test for potential witches, the so-called swimming test. And the idea was that water, being pure, would reject the body of a witch. So basically, witches are water repellent, right? So the accused witch would be bound and thrown into a river or a pond, and if they floated, that's the proof. A witch. She's in league with the devil. And then they'd be dragged out, only to face more torture and then eventually execution. Now, if they sank, the water had accepted them, which meant they were innocent and most likely dead from drowning before anyone would pull them out. So that's a perfect trap. And there was no way out. You were either guilty and burned or innocent and drowned. Isn't that fun?
It's wild to think, too, like when you really think about it. It was either you kind of knew how to swim and keep yourself up, or you sank.
Yeah.
Or you had larger boobs, so you were more naturally buoyant and floated, or not, and sank. Like, It's so incredibly...
Or, you know, the dresses, like an air bubble in the dress. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, it's so arbitrary. It's so completely random and horrifying. Property was confiscated, which of course meant authorities and neighbors had every incentive to keep the panic going. Women who owned land, houses, or even just a little bit of wealth were especially vulnerable. If a widow had no husband or sons to protect her, an accusation of witchcraft could make her neighbors richer and her rulers stronger. So the system was very much corrupt. The result was wave after wave of executions, often numbering in the hundreds. And because each confession led to more names, these hunts grew like wildfires, especially in places where there was no strong central authority to rein them in. This was the machinery of the witch craze: rumor, arrest, torture, confession, execution, repeating in brutal cycles. And with that in mind, let's look at Würzburg, where this pattern reached one of its deadliest peaks. It's the late 1620s. This was the middle of the 30 Years' War, one of the ugliest, most devastating conflicts in European history. Armies were marching back and forth across Central Europe. Famine and plague followed wherever they went. Life was short, brutal, and uncertain, and people were desperate for an explanation and for someone to blame. In Würzburg, that scapegoat became, of course, witches. Between 1626 and 1631, around 900 people were executed for witchcraft in Würzburg and the surrounding areas. 900. That's nearly 1,000 deaths in just 5 years, in a city that had maybe 40,000 people total. You didn't have to look far to find someone who had been accused, tortured, and burned.
And the man behind much of it was Prince Bishop Philipp Adolf von Ehrenberg. He was both a bishop and a secular ruler, and so he held obviously enormous power. And he believed rooting out witches was his holy mission. He set up special courts, he gave free rein to torturers, he encouraged people to denounce their neighbors, which is all lovely. At first, the victims were the usual suspects: women accused of the cattle curses, the crop spoiling, the storm causing. Very quickly, though, the panic spiraled out of control. Even prominent citizens, priests, members of the city council, they were not saved. They were accused as well. And then came the children. This is one of the most horrifying aspects of the Würzburg trials: the sheer number of children executed. Records suggest that as many as 300 children were killed. Some of them were accused of flying to the witches' Sabbath. Others were accused of consorting with the devil or betraying their own parents. And under torture, children confessed to anything. And then that child named another child. And then that child named another child and another. Setting off this chain reaction, as we said. These accusations pulled entire families down. One witness described how the victims, including nobles, canons, priests, students, councilmen, their wives, their children. Even the city's mayor's wife was accused and executed. Members of the cathedral school were burned. Clergy were burned. People of every social class, from beggars to aristocrats, ended up in the fire. The executions took place at the Judenberg, just outside the city walls. People were strangled or beheaded first, if they were lucky, and then their bodies burned. Many others were burned alive. The fires at Würzburg were so frequent that smoke rising from the execution site became a regular part of the city skyline. And of course, wonder oh wonder, the property of the condemned was confiscated. And that gave local officials and neighbors alike this super great incentive to keep the trials going. So if you wanted your neighbor's vineyard, or that stupid widow's house, just accuse them of witchcraft. That could make all of that yours. Easy. Speak of temptation, right? Which is so funny. Wouldst thou live deliciously in your neighbor's nice house over there, maybe? One contemporary observer wrote, quote, "There are children of 3 and 4 years of age among them. It has been said that the number is 300. The Prince Bishop has already burned 100 young scholars and yet more are found." End quote. Think about that for a second. Children barely old enough to speak were executed as witches, 3 and 4 years old? The panic became self-perpetuating. Torture produced confessions, confessions produced names, names produced more arrests. And with the 30 Years' War raging outside the city walls, there was no outside authority to step in and stop it. They had other problems. The Würzburg witch trials finally ground to a halt in 1631, and you know why? The Swedish troops captured the city during the war, and by then, nearly 1,000 people had been executed and all these families destroyed, and neighborhoods emptied, and fear and suspicion etched into the city's collective memory. Würzburg remains one of the darkest examples of the witch craze in Europe, and, unbelievably, just down the road in Bamberg, an almost identical panic was unfolding at the very same time.
Between 1626 and 1631, Bamberg carried out one of the other great witch panics of the age, with around 600 people executed. Like Würzburg, Bamberg was ruled by a prince-bishop, Johann Georg Fuchs von Dornheim. He earned himself the nickname Hexenbrenner, the witch burner. Subtlety was not his strong suit.
No.
He even had a special prison built just for witches, and he called it the Druden house, the house of the Druids. Remember the Druid that was that night hag who supposedly sat on your chest while you slept? That's what he named the prison, the house of the Druids. Charming. I think anytime someone's naming a prison something catchy about the prisoners, it's not a good look. No. Inside, torture was a way of life. Prisoners were starved, stretched, crushed, deprived of sleep, and interrogated until they confessed to flying to the Blocksberg, signing the devil's book, or cavorting with demons. And like in Würzburg, confessions weren't enough. Authorities demanded names of accomplices, and every confession, as we said, was just a domino knocking down a whole circle of neighbors. And Bamberg, too, went after absolutely everyone. Nobles, clergy, respected town leaders. No one was safe. Even the city's chancellor, Johann Georg Hahn, and his wife were executed. When your own government officials are being accused of flying off to Sabbaths on broomsticks, what is even left? One of the most heartbreaking stories from Bamberg is the case of Johannes Junius, the former mayor. In 1628, he was accused, arrested, and tortured until he quote-unquote confessed to witchcraft. But he managed to smuggle out a letter from prison to his daughter, and that letter is one of the few first-hand accounts that we have that shows exactly how this nightmare worked. He writes, quote, "Many 100,000 good nights, dearly beloved daughter Veronica. Innocent I came to the prison, innocent I was tortured, innocent I must die. For whoever comes into the witch prison must become a witch or be tortured until he invents something out of his head, and God pity him." End quote. It's devastating. He describes how, under torture, he eventually confessed just to make the pain stop. He names people he knows are innocent because that's what the judges want to hear, and then he tells his daughter to keep her head down, to say nothing to anyone, because, quote, "the least word can bring you to the rope." That letter is one of the most important documents we have from the witch craze, because it strips away all the superstition and shows exactly what these trials were: a system of torture and fear that destroyed lives regardless of guilt or innocence. By the time it was over, Bamberg had executed hundreds. The panic again only stopped when the Swedish army advanced during the 30 Years' War, the same way Würzburg's did. Military defeat, not justice, ended the killing. Between Würzburg and Bamberg together, you're looking at over 1,500 people executed in just 5 years, and that's in only 2 cities. If you zoom out, the witch craze in the German lands claimed tens of thousands of lives. Salem, honestly, looks like a footnote in comparison.
Yeah, because Würzburg and Bamberg weren't unique at all. They were just the most infamous ones. But the truth is, the German-speaking world was the epicenter of Europe's witch craze. Take Ellwangen, for example. Between 1588 and 1618, this little town in what's now Baden-Württemberg saw more than 450 people executed for witchcraft. The panic dragged on for decades, each new confession feeding the next round of arrests. Or Salzburg, here in Austria, between 1675 and 1690, the city staged what became known as the Zauberbubenprozesse, so the magic boys trials. These trials were focused on children and teenagers, and they were accused, again, of everything from flying to the Blocksberg and making pacts with the devil. Over 100 young people were executed, some of them barely in their teens. Imagine the fear in that city when entire groups of boys were rounded up and burned. You know, the hills are alive with the sound of sheer horror in that case.
Yeah, it's just all the screaming. Nobody can sleep in the hills.
It's not funny at all. I mean, none of this is funny. But,
oh my God. No.
You know, you need some dark humor, and we Austrians are very famous for it. I think Bostonians as well, right?
Oh, yeah. It's the only reason I'm still around today is my dark sense of humor.
That's why we get along so well, I think.
That's right. We're not laughing at anything that these people went through. It's just, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on here, and it's all terrible.
Yeah. Also, we have Tyrol and Carinthia, where witch trials were tied closely to the Alpine folklore. You know, the farmers. I mean, you have to imagine these farmers in the Alps. It's farming even today, but back then was hard even if you were a regular farmer. But farming in the Alps, that's a complete different level of hardship. And these farmers were convinced that the witches controlled the weather, and again, the stealing the milk and the butter, that's very valuable. Milk and butter costs a lot. The storms, you know, same old, same old. Women accused of this so-called Wetterzauber, weather magic, were tortured until they confessed to riding on broomsticks or, you know, smearing themselves with the flying ointment.
Oh, the flying ointment. And just the craziness that, like, if anyone had thought about this realistically, like, if you had the ability to control the weather, I guess that's why Satan's involved. I'm like, why wouldn't you take payment to make good weather? Like, there are so many better ways to live.
Yeah.
Can't we be good witches? Come on.
Nobody said thank you if the sun was shining. Oh, it must have been the good witches.
That's right. Yeah, no one, that's it. That's the point. Like, when things were going great, no one was like, oh, hey, neighbor, thanks for making things so great.
Yeah. No, because then it was God, obviously, so, yeah.
I mean, yeah, true.
The thing is, you know, in France and Italy, you have this kind of central authority, which in the German lands, there was none of that, and that's why, you know, Germany, Austria, this was a free-for-all. Like, these fires kept burning. And by the end of it, historians estimate that somewhere between 20 and 25,000 people were executed for witchcraft in the German-speaking regions alone. That's more than in any other part of Europe.
Now, it's true that men were also accused and executed during the witch hunts. In some regions, especially in Iceland, men actually made up the majority of victims. But in Central Europe, in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, the overwhelming majority were women. Historians estimate that across Europe as a whole, about 75 to 80% of those executed as witches were women. And in certain places, like southwestern Germany, the numbers were even higher, sometimes more than 90%. Why women? Because the stereotype of the witch was gendered from the beginning. Women were weaker in faith, more carnal, and therefore more likely to fall under Satan's sway. Combine that with the social reality that widows and single women often had no male protectors and were therefore easy targets. There's another layer too, women's knowledge. For centuries, women had been the ones who cared for the sick, delivered babies, and kept oral traditions of herbal remedies. They were the healers and the midwives, the wise women of their communities. But in the climate of fear, that same knowledge could look like sorcery. The woman who knew how to brew a potion for menstrual cramps could just as easily be accused of brewing a poison. A midwife who delivered a stillborn child might be blamed for killing it. So yeah, The witch hunts didn't just kill tens of thousands of women. They also silenced a body of knowledge. Herbal medicine, folk healing, midwifery. So much of it was driven underground or lost altogether because practicing it openly became dangerous. When you execute the women who hold generations of practical medical knowledge, you don't just kill people. You rob communities of wisdom that might have eased suffering, healed illness, or even saved lives. And that is one of the legacies of the witch craze that we don't talk about enough. The way misogyny and fear didn't just destroy individuals, but it also stripped away cultural and medical memory. Historians point out that the witch craze functioned almost like an early form of professional displacement. As universities and formal medical training, closed off to women of course, became more dominant, traditional female healers were rebranded as suspicious, dangerous, or outright satanic. Instead of being valued for their knowledge, they were criminalized for it. So yeah, while not every victim was a healer or a midwife, enough were that we can see a clear pattern. Women's knowledge, especially when it wasn't under male control, was treated as a threat. And that knowledge was punished brutally, often by fire. And the thing is, it's still happening though. Like this, pay attention everyone, because not every woman around the world can go to school today.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's the story. Centuries ago, being called a witch in Austria or Germany or anywhere in Europe could get you tortured, strangled, burned alive.
Yeah, and now it gets you pointy hat, sexy garter, and a bag of fun-sized Snickers. Progress.
Yeah, exactly. So today witches I think are one of the most popular Halloween costumes. And the word Hexe isn't a death sentence anymore. And since I was researching this episode, I kept having this German song in my head, like an Ohrwurm, we call it in German. Yeah, Hexe, it's something you call your cat or your best friend when she's a little bit too sassy, maybe.
Yeah, and of course, witches didn't just turn into costumes. There are modern Wiccans and pagans. They are alive, they are practicing. Thank goodness no one's hauling them off to the Druden house, at least not anymore.
It's kind of wild though, isn't it? The same figure that terrified whole towns and filled torture chambers is now, you see it on Max at TK Maxx or TJ Maxx, however you called it, and then it says basic witch or something like that.
Yeah, I kind of love it. I love that the witches survived.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be erased and instead they're icons. I love it. I love that if you do go to Salem today, you will see people dressed as witches, like on just a regular, I mean, you will see witches dressed as witches, as what we imagine witches to look like. And they have a lot of information there at the Witch Museum I have a picture of the Malleus Maleficarum from there. And they have a lot of really interesting, if you ever have a chance to go to the Witch Museum in Salem, they have a lot of really interesting information on that. But yeah, I like the quote that I see so often where the granddaughters of the witches you didn't burn.
Yeah.
Or couldn't burn. It's funny because I know it's come up every so often and I know she's got a big album coming up, but that's how I found out about Taylor Swift initially. Initially, she caught my eye because she has a song where there's a lyric. I know people are screaming it at the thing right now, but it's something like, they're burning all the witches, even if you aren't one. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And then she was in the news a lot because people were like, oh, they think she's working with the devil and she's summoning. And she literally started getting accused of being a sorceress and a witch and being in league with the devil.
Like Lady Gaga, the same, I think.
Same, exactly. Yeah, I'm always fascinated when it's like, ooh, who do they think is in Sleeping with the Devil now? And that's, that was one of the ways I was initially like, that's kind of interesting. It seems crazy to say like, oh, there are people out there who think Taylor Swift, but there are literally people out there who sincerely believe that. Like, this isn't over, y'all. This isn't, I know, thank goodness, hopefully, the panic is over. But the fact that people are still out there like, well, I think this lady might actually be. It's like, what year is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's worth remembering that, the fun-size candy and the Etsy witch hats are built on the history of real people mostly women, not all of them, but so many women, and they didn't get to laugh about it. I mean, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here. Like, we should all enjoy Halloween and everything. But I don't know.
No, a lot of people died, and in Salem, I know a lot of people say, oh, where were they burned? And we didn't burn here. We pressed, mostly hanged, and a few unluckies were pressed, just piled rocks one at a time until they were crushed. But it's serious. It's serious stuff. And it's really hard to even wrap our minds around how much we lost because of these kinds of things. So when you see a witch flying past on a broomstick this Halloween, maybe just spare a thought for the thousands who just never made it out of the fire. You thought you were a Debbie Downer. Do you have anything good?
Do we have something good? I have something good.
What?
What's her name? The actress who played in The Witch. Anya.
Oh, Anya Taylor-Joy.
Taylor-Joy, exactly. I know I'm so late to the whole thing. Last week I was bored in the evening and I kind of was, scrolling around Netflix. Nothing really caught my eye. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to try this Queen's Gambit because everybody was like, oh, it's so great.
I loved it so much.
And I was like, it's chess. It's so boring. But I like her as an actress. So I thought, okay, I give it a chance.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The first night I watched until 3 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't stop. I had to force myself to turn off the TV and go to sleep.
Yay.
And then I finished it the next day. Then I told my sister about it. Then I hooked my mom on it.
I love this.
It's so good.
It's so good, right?
It's so good. Yeah.
I loved it.
Sad, funny, the costumes, the whole set design,
it's
the music.
It's beautiful to watch, isn't it? The whole thing. I'm so glad you're loving it.
I was so tense the whole time. It's so...
I love that.
Suspenseful. Yeah.
Mine, I might have already suggested this, actually. I can't remember now, everyone. We've done so many episodes. But if you haven't already read the Discovery of Witches series, I really enjoy it very much. It's Deborah Harkness is the author. There's a bunch of them. If you just want to, something, I'm going to say light because it's not the lightest necessarily, but fiction. But the main person is somebody who is a descendant of witches. And that's all I'm going to really tell you. It's like, what if the witch aspect of things was real? What if they were actually magic witches? And it kind of takes it from there. So I really enjoyed that book series a lot.
All right, Hellions, that's it for this week's spooky fuckery. Oh, we're going to get so many messages again because I said a swear word. We really got better with swearing, but it's SFM. I'm sorry.
SFM.
Don't forget, it's October, which means our Halloween Listener Stories episode is coming. If you've got a creepy, funny, or just plain weird story, send it to us. Please, you have until 24th of October.
That's right. We want all of it. Ghosts, true crime connections, urban legends, that time your aunt for sure saw Bigfoot at the Stop and Shop. Email us, freshhellpodcast@gmail.com, or through the Contact Us form on our website, which is freshhellpodcast.com.
And while you're online, you can join our Facebook group. It's one of the nicest, weirdest corners of the internet and the only one we actually recommend.
And of course, Patreon. Huge thank you to all of our patrons. You keep this spooky ship afloat. Can I just say really quickly how much I enjoy our patrons. I really do want to send a shout out to all of you because we have such a nice, active Patreon community and a chat. And I literally sometimes will see stuff like I've been going through old pictures and video of stuff I've mentioned over the years. And I'm like, I should really share some of this with some of our patrons because, So I'm going to try to be better about that because I really love it when you guys reach out to us. It brings us so much joy. So thank you. So yeah.
Yeah, also one of the patrons came up with the idea to make like a group chat with titled Something Good, where everybody, if something good happened that day, you can write it in and then everybody's like, yeah, that's great. Or, sharing the good things.
It's so
not
nice.
Just the misery.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, if you want early access to episodes, bonus content, all kinds of extras, then join us over at patreon.com and search Fresh Hell Podcast.
If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave us a comment under the episodes. We actually do read them. Same goes for YouTube. Subscribe, hit the little bell button or whatever it is, leave a comment. Tell us you'd survive Walpurgisnacht. Tell us you would ride. I know one of our YouTube listeners who will definitely tell us she would ride on a billy goat to Walpurgisnacht.
Brandy.
I'm looking at you.
We're looking at you, Brandy Jean. How are you? Shout out to all of our YouTube listeners who like and subscribe. We really appreciate you so much.
They every week they just stare at our logo and a circle is spinning around our logo, and that's
fine.
all they do.
It's YouTube is how my dad knows to listen to us. He finds the other ways confusing.
My mom too.
Yeah.
My mom too. And now she has this, because it has this transcript thing where she can read along because she doesn't speak English, which is so cute.
I love that. Oh, yeah. I think that's so great.
And now they have this option on YouTube where these weird AI voices talk over us and speak in German. And she calls me, why do you do that? That now I have to listen in German and I can't hear your voice. I'm like, Mom, I didn't do it. You have to go to your settings and it's YouTube. Just turn it off.
I had no idea that was an option. That's wild.
So everybody who has this problem, if you're not in an English-speaking country, check your settings for YouTube. It's so annoying. It's these weird AI voices and I hate it.
Oh, that's what I want to do, though. Well, I want to read the transcript. I don't want the AI voice with you're in Ingrid's podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please write a review and give us a rating. We cannot tell you what an impact it makes for you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That's the gold. That's kind of the holy grail gold standard. You can also, I believe, write reviews and leave ratings on both Audible and IMDb. And we would appreciate that as well if you don't have access to Apple. There's other options. So thank you. If you do one thing for the podcast ever, just please leave us a review. And you can always say like, hey, more of this. Or, yeah, more of this is a better way of than saying less of that. Because whatever the less is, that someone else wants it. You think no one wants the weird, spooky ones or the unsolved ones, but I guarantee you, as passionately as you feel that you wish we didn't do this one thing, there's someone else that's their favorite.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's all good.
I think that's why we decided early on to just do what we find interesting, because I think that's when we're at our best.
That's it. And it's okay. If this particular episode, but you're going to learn something weird you didn't expect. So, yeah.
Also, and that's also really important, recommend us to everyone you encounter. Unless it's a goat whispering about living deliciously, then maybe don't recommend us.
I don't know. If you find a talking goat, I want it. I want the talking goat.
Do still tell the talking goat we love it.
Yes.
It's a goat after all.
Tell the goat we're fans.
But don't send it our way. Anyway, tell all your pets we said hi. Hug them, cuddle them. Make them live deliciously. They deserve it. Be kind to them.
Don't forget to love the unloved.
Yeah, true. Also, please be kind to all the other people. Be kind to your neighbor. Don't accuse them of witchcraft and get them burned alive. And be kind to yourself and make yourself live deliciously once in a while.
That's right. And remember, if you're going through hell,
you're probably a witch. Tschüss.
Bye. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blind worm's sting, lizard's leg and howlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth, boil and bubble.
Not a tongue of a dog, though.
No. I don't like that part. And also, bats don't have wool. It's fine.
I mean, it's all pretty fucked up.
It's a work in progress.
Bye.
Bye.